Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm going to talk about something today that very impactful for our children. And you may have had some challenges with this even growing up, and it may have changed your life in many different ways. I'm referring to bullying. It was a challenge when lots of us were younger, now even more so when you layer on social media and much more that's going on in our world. He's somebody that is very close to this as a district psychologist at the Reed Union School District in California. And we're going to get some insight from him. And by the way, you can also reach out to us if you got a question or a comment. Instant feedback, steve@gmail.com or 631-319-6275. Allan Philip Gold joins us here on the program today. How are you doing today?
Okay, and I'm very pleased to be able to talk about this topic today.
It would have been big if we were talking about it 20, 30, 40 years ago. Obviously, it wouldn't be on a Zoom and we wouldn't be doing a podcast. They didn't exist then. But has anything aside from social media adding to the complexity, the challenges, in terms of bullying itself, do you feel that anything has really changed in 50 years?
Yes, absolutely. When I was a kid, I was very short and I was teased. My nickname was Shrimp, and I didn't know what to do about it, and school didn't do anything about it. Um, I think bullying is part of American culture. I don't know about other cultures, but it's part of the American culture to be superior to other people. So I think bullying is one way that people try to do that. They want to seem better than other people. There's always anger
Mm.
that people are feeling that they take out on other people. Um, One of the phrases, I don't know if you're familiar with this, um, but I've taught it to kids, is that hurt people hurt people.
Mm.
And it really makes sense because you don't know what people, particularly kids, are experiencing at home. They may be being teased by older siblings, hurt by parents, and it's much easier to take it out on their peers than it is on the people who are inflicting the bullying and the teasing. But as you said, Steve, earlier, current culture is so much more complex now, and it's so much meaner. I mean, when I think about growing up, um, like in the 50s and early 60s, television was so much kinder. I mean, I remember
Mm.
um, watching Leave It to Beaver, and the only person who was a little bit sarcastic was Eddie Haskell. And many people might not remember that,
Hmm.
but over the past 20, 30, 40 years, movies and television have gotten so much more meaner, uh, so much more mean. Um,
It's true, by the way, and I remember Leave It to Beaver and the I mean, Eddie was, a little bit of a, thorn in the side.
yes.
However, I always remembered Mrs. Cleaver, June.
Hmm.
She would always say, "Ward, go easy on the boys," meaning,
Yes.
Dad. But that
Right.
was the roughest part of their entire life. So you're
Yeah.
100% right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's true. And if we look at movies now, and television, they're often making fun of people all the time, and it's often males
Mm.
that are the victims of that. Um, and I'm going to be a little political here. When Trump became president, I saw a very big escalation of meanness among kids.
Wow.
Now, they may not have heard specific comments, but um, we have to acknowledge that political leaders set the tone for the country about how people treat each other.
Mm.
And his meanness has really escalated and it filters down. For example, when he called veterans losers, when he curses some foreign people, even when he called the governor of my state, California, Governor Gavin Newsom, he calls him new scum. That sort of role model is toxic. It's very, very toxic. And what it does is unleash in all people those feelings that they may have, negative feelings for other people, and it gives them permission to tease and bully and make fun of other people. And as you said earlier, I totally agree that social media is a prime factor in meanness. It's so much easier to text a message or post a message without engaging in dialogue to discuss any concerns. So verbal bullying among kids and adults is much easier when you don't have to confront someone in person. Okay?
I feel too that, and by the way, I want to go back to what you said at the very, very, very beginning, how our society um, kind of fosters it. Even if you factor out the political aspect of it, that we're just in our society not so nice sometimes. But
No,
what
no.
is missed by many here is that the bullying of a child is not just the childhood. Potentially, you are, I don't want to say destroying, but you are changing the way that little person is for the rest of their life. Unfortunately, it could be a kid bullying another kid. Man, I don't see that. They wouldn't realize that until another 20 years,
Mhm.
but it stays with kids. And
No,
then
I
now they
agree,
become
and I'm
adults.
going to talk about that in some detail. Because you're absolutely right about that. So the question is, given our society and given social media and it's not just politicians either that do this. There's been actors and there's been athletes, that just do not limit themselves to what they say, and instead of dealing with an issue, they just put other people down. So what can be done about this? At least in
Mm.
the United States, it's really a universal problem. So the way I look at it, both parents and schools have huge responsibilities to address teasing and bullying. Parents have to be very careful to monitor what their kids are exposed to, when
Mm.
they're little or even adolescents, teenagers, and to resist making negative comments about others in front of them. Parents set a role model. Kids,
Yeah.
you think they're not listening to you, but they really do absorb how you treat them and other people. Parents need to verbally express how important respect for others is. It
Mm.
needs not just assumed. Even if you disagree with somebody, there's ways to do it in a respectful way.
I want to, if I may, press the pause
Yeah.
button because we do have a call. Hi, who's this?
Hi, this is David Collins. I was just giving you a call. I was giving you a shout, listening, and it's very gripping what you're saying. I go to the University of Pennsylvania, and I was looking to get into psychology for kids, and wanted to know what's the best way to deal with the bullying parent that's not understanding.
Mm.
Okay. Very good question. Chances are, if the parent is bullying, the kid is going to either express some kind of, feeling. Either they're going to do it to other kids or they're going to express some real concern about that. So, one thing that I used to do was talk to kids about good and bad touch, and that included physical and verbal abuse. And so it's so important that schools are very aware of these things. So if it turns out that giving lessons and you encourage kids to tell, then there's child protective services that there are legal requirements for school employees to inform. so that that can be dealt with. So it's a very complicated situation, but if there's any, it's much more important to err on the side of the child than to protect the parents. So if there's any thought or sense that a child is being bullied and abused by a parent, it's a legal requirement to inform either the police or child protective services and to pursue it.
Mm. Did you say that you're looking at a career in psychology?
Yeah, actually, I was looking to take it up. I took my Psych Class 101, which is very interesting, and with the different methods and psychoses. And a friend of mine, her mother does that for a grade school out here, and she encounters a lot of stories. So it definitely is interesting.
Well, we appreciate you calling in, and best of luck to you too.
Thank you
Yeah,
so much.
thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Um, we talked about parents here.
Yeah.
Let's say that you suspect or that your child is being bullied. What do you do?
Okay. Well, as a parent, I think it's super important, obviously, if it's um, happening at school, to let the school administration know. So let me tell you what I've done for several years. And it doesn't have to be the principal of the school. In fact, probably somebody like a counselor or psychologist. So at my schools for the past several years, I went into classrooms to teach kids about teasing and bullying. And I would ask them, I'd start out asking, what shouldn't we make mean comments about for other kids, other people?
Hmm.
Even kids as young as third grade could name the following conditions that they shouldn't comment about. Certainly, kids' appearance, their hair, their weight, their height, their skin color, what wearing glasses or what clothes they're wearing, their gender, their sexual orientation. Even kids that young knew not to tease about sexual orientation if they knew it. Kids' language or country of origin, if they didn't speak fluent English, you don't make fun of them. Their academic performance, for sure, any disabilities or difficulties with learning, their athletic performance, their emotional responses, such as crying. So kids could name all of these things. They knew what not uh, to tease kids about. And then as I said, I taught kids that hurt people, and the kids really did understand that. So it's really the responsibility of schools to address meanness by having such classroom lessons. And if it's going on, um, probably not to the physical level, but it's absolutely critical to have a counselor or psychologist meet with the kids in person to try to
Hmm.
deconstruct what's going on. Okay, and what do I mean by that? There's lots of questions to ask. Ask the bully, what are you trying to accomplish with this bullying? If something's bothering you, why is it bothering you? Is anyone else at home hurting your feelings or bullying you? And then it's not always a one-way street. You can ask, is there something this person, it's this kid, the victim, is doing that's annoying you? It's not impossible that the victim is doing something to bother the bully that needs to be explored. And as part of the discussions, clear limits have to be set by the school. So if the bullying continues, once you've had the discussion, parents are informed and there are consequences at school. That has to be. But that shouldn't happen before discussion, although if there's physical hurt and injury, then that obviously would be addressed. Often in discussions, kids would say, she's mean to me or he's mean to me. And I would say, well, what does mean mean?
Mm.
Okay. In other words, be very specific. Well, she's ignoring me on the playground, but she's my friend. Or she's keeps hitting me to get my attention, or whatever it is. And, once you have a specific action or words, that gives you a chance to address it and correct it. I would often, with two kids, say, complete the sentence. If you would just do a little bit more of this or a little bit less of that, I think we could get along better. So there are often things that, can be corrected. And then I also talked about how to express concerns in a respectful way. And this is really important. I talked to kids about hard feelings and soft feelings. So a hard feeling is like anger or frustration. And we all know that when somebody is angry at us, we usually do one of two things. We yell back and scream back, or we stick our fingers in our ears and don't listen. But if a soft feeling is expressed, and I used to teach this to kids when talking to parents when talking to kids, and kids when talking to each other, soft feeling might be, I'm really confused, or that hurts my feelings, or I'm worried, or concerned, or I'm depressed, or I feel excluded, or even I'm curious, I don't understand, or I'm uncomfortable. When we express those kind of feelings, I won't guarantee that the person is always going to listen, but there's, I think, a better chance that the person's going to listen and try to understand and feel less attacked. Um, so I think that's another strategy that kids can learn and that parents can use with their kids. If a parent is if a kid's dawdling around in the morning and the parent says, "Come on, hurry up! I'm going to be late." What's the kid going to do? Probably dawdle a little bit more. But if the parent said something like, honey, I'm really worried my boss is going to get mad at me if I'm late. Can you please hurry up so I can get you to school on time? In a quiet, more respectful way, there's a better chance that the kid would listen.
Yeah, because you're explaining it. You're giving them the reason.
You're giving
Um,
them the reason, not just blowing up. Um,
I have an email I want to read, instantfeedbacksteve@gmail.com. Dawn checks in from Baldwinsville, New York, and says,
okay.
my son is having an issue with someone at school. It appears to be bullying. I know who his parents are through some sports activities. Should I confront the parents or go directly to the school?
That's an excellent, excellent question. Um, I would suggest going to the school first, particularly if it's that, because um, parent, although if they did have a good relationship with the parents, they could say, I've heard this from my son, I presume, or it could be my daughter. I know it's only one side of the story. I know there's probably two sides to the story. But and do you have any information about why this might be going on? But if the school could intervene first in doing what I'm saying, talking to the kids and finding out what's going on, and then contact the parents
Mm.
to help them support their kid in not doing the bullying or dealing with the other kid in a more respectful way. There's no one right answer, and I look at it as teamwork. If the school's able to help those kids have a discussion um, and find out what's really going on, and that's where social media is so useless, because you're just posting stuff and you're not really having those discussions. Sometimes it would take me, 45 minutes to kind of deconstruct what was actually going on there. Um,
I see this in a different way now, Alan, in terms of, this the question from Dawn. My first inclination might be to just go to the parents. Don't want to start a big thing, just a quick mention to them. However, you don't know how they're going to take it.
right. They're
You're
defensive. Parents tend to be defensive.
yes, and then that's going to, raise the feathers, if you will, of everybody involved. And then also you're creating a record. Who knows where this is going to go? So if it escalates, at least the school is involved, and the school doesn't even need to say that. Dawn's um, went to the school. They could just say, "Yeah, we have word of we understand something," and just leave it at that. Yeah, because some parents, I don't want to be the tattletale, but I think you have to protect yourself in some regards as
You
well.
have to you have to protect your child.
Mm.
But as I said earlier, you never know. Maybe the kid is doing something to annoy the other kid. There's always two sides to a story here.
Every relationship involves two.
Yeah. But I think that's where I felt so useful is to be able to work
Yeah.
um, with the kids to try. Now, sometimes it doesn't work, and it continues. Then definitely the parents need to be involved. But and I think you might have mentioned it, a totally critical goal for all kids, not only to combat and resist the bullying, but for the rest of their lives, is to develop positive and strong self-esteem.
Mm.
So kids and adults who feel good about themselves don't need to put down others to feel better. And I've worked with a lot of children, frankly, and a lot of adults, my own peers who were, and you said it earlier, were bullied or put down or criticized when they were young, and they carry that with them through their entire lives. And I don't necessarily mean that everybody needs to be an egotistical narcissist. But if we have good esteem, it means that we feel generally good about ourselves, that we recognize we make mistakes and we can learn from them and correct them. Um, so I worked with a lot of kids to eval. First, I try to evaluate their own self-esteem. Tell me three or four things that you like about yourself. And younger kids would say, well, I'm a good reader, or I'm good at soccer or whatever it is,
Hmm.
more skills. And then once they reach sort of middle school, it'd be, well, I'm a really funny guy. I'm a good friend. I'm helpful to people. So they're more personal characteristics that they're able to, as well as things that they may be good at.
We should be doing this as adults as well.
Absolutely.
And you know what? I want to share something with you because it's in real time. I'm part of a men's group. I think I shared that with you. And last night, there was an exercise, and 10 men in the room. Um, we're going to stare at a mirror, and people are going to ask questions. And we had to do that in front of everybody else. And exactly what you just said, part of it was the qualities that you're proud of in yourself. And it
Hmm.
was, quite challenging where you're staring at yourself in a mirror where most people don't even feel comfortable doing that. Even just
Yeah,
to say,
yeah,
I love you to yourself in a mirror, which you should be able to, in my opinion, but also have others watching as you're speaking to yourself.
yeah.
It was fantastic, but it
It
was a little,
was,
I didn't even know the word. And usually I'm not at a loss, maybe a little unnerving. But
yeah.
it was, my point here is you said, where you asked that question of children, we should be asking that of ourselves as well.
You're absolutely right. And what I talk to kids about, I talk to kids about developing what I call a self-esteem bank. I
Hmm.
would ask kids, what do we do with the bank? And say, well, we put money in it, and then when we need it, we can take it out. And self-esteem bank is when we put good thoughts about ourselves, and when we need to refer to those, they're there. So, for example, and I would tell people, kids, I've got an assignment for you. You don't have to make a big deal out of it, but every night before you go to bed, just
Hmm.
think of something you did today that you're proud of doing. And it doesn't have to be a big deal. It doesn't mean you got an A plus on your math test or your spelling test. Could be I gave a kid a compliment, or I helped pick up some pencils that my seatmate dropped, or just a little
Sure.
thing. Doesn't have to be big things. And you build, and if you want to, I had one kid in the fourth grade once said, well, I'm writing down these things. I said, that's great. And when you need to um, go into that self-esteem bank because either you are telling yourself, boy, I'm so stupid, I messed up that test, I'm never going to get it right. Because we can be very, very hard on ourselves, or if it comes from outside. Um, and if somebody makes a comment, that self-esteem bank builds some armor. And we can remind
Hmm.
ourselves when somebody makes a mean comment about ourselves. Well, wait a second. I know that I'm good at this and I'm good at that, and this
Yeah.
is my personality. university, that person must have a problem. They're saying that. And, but it's also when somebody does make a negative comment about us, there's nothing the matter with thinking, well, did I do something wrong? Is there something that I can correct? And that's usually behaviors that you can correct. If somebody teases you because you've got buck teeth or your eyes are too slanty or whatever, that you can't change.
Mm.
And lots about ourselves we can't change.
We're
But
just about out of time. This
oh,
has
okay.
been so impactful and an eye opener for not just people with kids, but the rest of us. Even
All
what,
of us.
yeah, absolutely. Even what you just said about ending your day and what did you do that was impactful or nice? Maybe you held the door at the convenience store for
Yeah,
somebody.
exactly. Yeah.
Acknowledge it because it's something that you did for
Right.
somebody else. Alan, it's always great having you on here,
Thank-
and just the insight. Plus, you make it easy to understand. I know that as a school psychologist, you've got some deep roots there in terms of how the mind works, but it's easy to understand for the rest of us, and I appreciate that.
Yeah. Good.
Thank you for being here. Looking forward next
Okay.
time we get together.
Okay. Thanks very much. I love the topic. I mean, I hate bullying, but I love being able to talk about it.
Well, I appreciate you being here, and it's something that we need to talk about. And maybe in the future,
Yep.
instant feedback, steve@gmail.com if you have a comment. We'll be right back.
Okay.
Broadcasting.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.